The opportunity came up to name 2 buildings within the Totem Park residence, which is kind of notorious for the appropriation of names. They have different names like Haida, Kwakiutl.
Sort of anglicized Aboriginal names.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been like that since '62. And 2 new buildings were built just over the summer, and we decided what better way to, make students feel welcome, teach them about local history, than use traditional Musqueam place names in their traditional language, Hunkaminam.
So what are the names and how were they selected?
They were selected by consultation with Musqueam, and the names are Kalachan and Humlasam.
What do they mean?
Kalachan is a fortified area. You know how at the Museum of Anthropology there are all those gun emplacements from World War II? Well, long before that, Capilano had a fortified site there on Point Grey. So Kalachan is that place name. And Humlasam is a story about how there was someone near Wreck Beach. There's a freshwater stream there, and someone was there, Humlasam was there, and using the water and not being careful about it, and not preserving this sacred resource. So Chels, the transformer, came by, turned into stone, and the stone is still there, and his water basin is a smaller stone right there.
So do you think, you mentioned the other older homes, there's I think 6 other older homes in the complex that are sort of anglicized Aboriginal names. Do you think you could change those eventually as well? Is that the plan?
We thought about that, but take for example Nootka. That word hasn't been used for a long time. It's, if you're referring to the peoples of the west coast of Vancouver Island, it's Nuu-chah-nulth, right? But we thought, would it be better to change those and erase that history of appropriation, or teach students about the story of that name, which is, apparently Cook was coming into Nootka Sound on his ship, and there was a bunch of people on the coast, and they were saying, Nootka, Nootka, get out of the way, because there was a reef there. He didn't know. And he's like, oh, these people must be called Nootka. I think it's more important for students to learn those stories, how we got to where we are now, that intercultural history, than just erase it and say, that's politically incorrect, let's make it right.
How far can a name go to change attitudes and teach Aboriginal culture and history?
Well, I think specifically for first year students, when you go to residence, that's your first home away from home for a lot of students, right? So they really grow attached to these names. And I think, when these names are decontextualized, they can, sometimes use them in wrong ways. And that's always going to happen, and there's no bad meaning, intentions behind that. But if the name that they're connecting to has a really deep meaning, like Kalachan and Humlasam do, and they're, significant of the, growing relationship between UBC and Musqueam, I think that will make a difference.
Hoping for a change in attitude then as well?
And we've seen it already. I mean, a lot of, especially the student leaders, the RAs, the RCs, have really grabbed on to this
RAs and
idea.
RCs, you better translate that to people who don't live in residence.
The residence advisors, the residence coordinators that live with, they're kind of the mentors of the first year students. They've really grabbed hold. They want to know more. They've been putting on their own events. They've gone for tours. They've put on their own video nights, looking critically at some of these representation issues on their own.
Did you have any challenges in coming up with the names? And if so, what were they?
Well, one of our big challenges was that Musqueam, they represent their language using the International Phonetic Alphabet. So there's some upside down E's, which is called a schwa, and there's these different symbols that are unfamiliar to English speakers. So it was kind of hard to get through that attitude that a lot of us, growing up with the privilege of speaking the universal language of English, and we don't realize that that's not always the best way to represent the language. So for Musqueam, you can't use English letters to represent, because that wouldn't be their language, right? So we had to really convince people that yes, learn a few new symbols, and that will be the best.
Spencer, what's your heritage?
It's pre-Métis, Scottish, English, German.
But there's Aboriginal mixed in there.
Yes, yes.
How did that, plus your studies, how did that impact this?
Well, I felt privileged to grow up, at least knowing that heritage, was in my blood. For my dad, that wasn't the same. He, was taught to kind of forget about it, or you're so and so. So that's what really got me interested. I grew up away from the culture, but I grew up with an interest, with that pride, and that's what led me to study First Nations. And from there, it just, there's so much in the field that's really interesting.
So what's next with this initiative?
Well, last year it started with the Student Leadership Conference. That's how we had this idea. We presented it as a highlighted project. It's happening again on Saturday, so we're going to present again. I think there's going to be more students that have heard about our project, and we're really looking for more discussion and for more students to get involved. And there's a bunch more histories just within the Point Grey campus that we want to bring to light. We want more students to come become ambassadors of our cause. So,
right. Interesting. Thank you so much for coming in this morning to tell us about it.
Thanks so much.
Spencer-Lindsay, co-founder of the Decolonizing Knowledge at UBC, speaking at the Student Leadership Conference at UBC on Saturday this weekend. 2.5 minutes to go now before 8 o'clock. Cecilia Walters is back.